Each state actually is different in its application of laws pertaining to youth on boards. There are 7 states, I believe, that outright prohibit minors from serving on boards. Most, over 40 states, do allow it. In Wisconsin, for instance, a youth person can serve on a board. However, we have other restrictions for youth signatories. So a youth on our board could vote, but could not sign a legally binding contract like a lease for our office. Many of our board members are not signatories. I am a signatory, our president is a signatory, and our secretary is a signatory, and that constitutes the whole group of us that could sign any document that legally binding for the league. So we think that this will, one, expand our membership possibilities, create an inclusivity that we do not have extended right now to young people interested in our important work. And there will be very few restrictions on what they can and cannot do as a voting member of this organization.
So I see a question, Sarah, would you accept memberships from parents for their kids?
I think if a parent were the primary member, as is kind of the current system, and the second member in the household was the child, that would be a household member then. There's many ways for young people to join the organization. They could join independently, or they could join in a household.
And has the US told you why they didn't recommend this?
Yes, they did. There were a couple of reasons that they cited. I think the one they're going to hang their hat on, to be honest, is that this will increase the liability risk for the organization overall for us to have minors at our table. We have tried to point out to the National League. There were National League board members who pointed this out to the bylaws committee. We already allow minors to sit at our board tables. 16 and 17-year-olds are minors. We are currently insured. We have been insured since 2016 when this age restriction was instated. I think what we are seeing now is a awakening of our national board that indeed when we are fully inclusive of young people, we need policies in place to ensure that all organizational members know how to interact and deal with these young people. You know, unlike some organizations that would take young people out camping or to subject them to some, risk of nature or something of that nature, we invite people to meetings in the libraries. This is a very low risk kind of organization. We do have to be careful though. I mean, there's always a potential for human harm. And I think what we're seeing now at National Convention, I don't know if the other delegates or other presidents, maybe Laura, you received it, if we're sending minor members to the National Convention, Nationals actually sent out a permission slip, essentially, to help limit their liability should something happen to that minor member. We are bringing minor members to the convention, and they have signed the permission slip, and but that's a good thing. We see that as the policy that's necessary, and not, having a bylaw that's in opposition to our DEI policy, the policy that is just inherent to our transformation journey, kind of has us speaking out of both sides of our mouths. It's like, oh, well, we can disregard this part of the DEI policy, but we can't disregard some of the other more important parts. Well, age is an important part of the DEI policy.
So I see one talking about, so are you saying that 12 and 13-year-olds could be, and the question says members, but I'm going to read this as voting members.
Yes, they can be voting members. That's what we're proposing, that it gives them full voice in the organization. We've all watched fabulous young people, the Greta Thunbergs of the world, who at 11 years old are changing, the planet, frankly. We would not allow Greta a vote in our organization. It's a sadness, and it's a violation of our own policy, and we need to eliminate this antiquated restriction.
So can I just ask a question myself? So the league allows immigrants who are not citizens to be voting members, correct?
That's correct.
So having the right to vote in an election is separate from whether or not you're a league voting member.
Correct.
We can't show photographs of a minor without parental consent. Would that be an issue?
I think that that is the policy that the National League needs to develop, though we haven't had such policies since 2016, when this age restriction was written into our bylaws. I think that instead of not accepting this bylaw recommendation, the national office could have taken another path, and that path would be to make sure that how we incorporate young people into the organization is done according to all the best practices, and not just by ignoring the fact that we have voting members who are minors in the organization and have had such for 6+ years now.
So there's also a question, will league members, or maybe should league members be required to receive training such as I have to do when I work with minors at my church?
I think that's not a bad idea, especially if we're going to be pushing certain activities for younger participants. But we don't have any policy around that right now. So what the national office might do in the way of creating training, they created other DEI trainings. This might be another facet of DEI training. I welcome those kind of changes so that we are being the inclusive organization that we have visioned on this transformation journey.
I see a question about what's wrong with being an associate member, because we have both voting and associate members, and I assume the questioner means minors could be associates.
Well, and minors can be associates. That's kind of the associate designation exists, as well as individuals who don't want to pay dues, but they can't vote. Their voice is not equally represented at our tables as an associate member. Also, associate members are not entered into the national database. So all correspondence from national that comes to members, voting members, would not go to an associate member. So they'd be out of the communication loop with regard to national messaging.
Interesting. Are there any organizations for people younger than 16 who've endorsed this concept?
There are many. Some of them are organizational partners of ours, like the Girl Scouts. And we have, there are leagues in around the nation who have created youth councils, who have designated a board position, for a youth member. That would be a 16 or 17-year-old currently. This is not something that's not happening. It's just something that we're not doing organization-wide because of the bias in the bylaw.
Do you know of organizations that, I don't see this question, but do you know of organizations that have opened their voting to minors in the last few years? Is this something where you see it happening?
In Kent County, Ohio, there's a project called the Voter Girl Project, which is a more youth-led project. There's Youth Civic Engagement Initiative that's run out of Minnesota, that's league connected. In Maine, also connected to the league, is a youth council. These leagues have proactively created a space for young people, but are tethered by this national bylaw restriction. So by eliminating the restriction, they would further open the equity of even these projects that are ongoing both in our organization and outside of our organization.
If the membership article, where we would remove the you have to be over 16 to vote, if the age requirement there were removed, would it be possible to add one into the directors and officers article to conform with either state law or insurance policies or a local league wanting to put more wheels on it?
Yeah, I'm not an insurance expert, and D&O policies vary around the state or around the nation rather. Even in Wisconsin, we have insurers who are providing D&O to some of our local leagues. We get our D&O from another carrier. I don't know if there's uniformity in the insurance world around this, although I do think we all need to be honest with our insurers that right now, even under our current bylaws, we have voting members who are minors.
No, actually, my question was different. So we could have voting members who are minors.
Correct.
Could even be 12 and a voting member if we remove, or 8, if we remove the age requirement. But there may be an issue about being an officer or a director, and that could be addressed in a different article, right?
I suspect yes, and probably would have to be addressed through local policies. Like here in Wisconsin, where a minor, any age minor, can't execute a contract, couldn't sign on behalf of the organization. We would have to make sure at our board table, we have another person who would be designated to sign a contract, but that would allow the youth members' voice to be heard in all of the conversation leading up to the vote on whether or not we want a contract with, fill in that blank.
Thank you. This has been really helpful. Appreciate that your speaking was fast, so you got more questions. Next, we're going to go to Kathy Stein, who's going to be talking about the digital equity concurrence. So thank you, Deborah. Kathy, take it away.
Okay, get my PowerPoint rigged up here. Okay, I'm Kathy Stein of the St. Lawrence County League and the New York State Board. I'm going to be joined in answering questions by Pua Ford of the Connecticut League and Akana Peck of the LWV of New Mexico. And just going to hit a few points, invite you to learn more at our caucus. I'm going to quickly address 4 questions. What is the Connecticut League position that we're asking for LWV US to concur with? Position on digital equity. What does digital equity mean? How much digital inequity do we have now? And what would having a national league position allow us to do? You see the web address at the top. That is on the LWV New Mexico website. There is a broadband page that will give you the full text of our concurrence. Really, the heart of the Connecticut position is that high-speed, affordable internet access is an essential service that should be available everywhere, regardless of geographical location or demographic neighborhood. The demographics of a neighborhood. Also, that community access media and public affairs programming must be protected, promoted, and adequately funded. And Pua Ford will be saying more about that at our caucus. So equity, digital equity means access to all and affordability for all. And also with enough bandwidth and speed to engage in all the activities that you see here on the screen, in which the pandemic has made us all painfully aware of the the necessity of them. And determining, however, who has access and who doesn't is not as easy as you might think. For example, you can't rely on the FCC data, and Akana can speak to this extensively. What we need to advocate for are on-the-ground surveys of who has coverage and who doesn't, such as the state of Georgia has done. The lightest color yellow here are unserved areas. And you can see when you compare the FCC map with the state map that until you actually check on the ground, you don't really know. Again, New York example, FCC 250,000 households, broadband now, over 1.2 million households lacking access. And the Pew Research Center recently, 42 million people lacking broadband access in their homes, including at least 28% of rural residents. Okay, so access, sheer access is one problem. Then there's the problem of speed. And here again, the FCC has let the side down, has set woefully inadequate speed minimums of 25 megabits. And again, another New York example estimates that of New Yorkers who do have access, only, some of them have speeds that meet the minimum terms. And, inadequate speed and bandwidth are other sources of digital inequity, and which fall more heavily on rural residents, but certainly digital inequity is also an urban problem, as we know, largely because of affordability. So the current situation is that only Connecticut, New Mexico, and Tennessee, having already concurred with the Connecticut position, are able to fully advocate as the league for broader access. And there are currently $42 billion in newly available federal funds, and these decisions are being made right now on how to spend these funds. A yes vote on Friday and Sunday, because as you know, since we're not recommended, both the Friday plenary and then the Sunday plenary will need a yes vote, will enable all 700 of our leagues to have a national position that will empower us to advocate as the league. So we ask you to please support expansion of digital equity, and by supporting this concurrence with the League of Women Voters of Connecticut position.
Thank you, Kathy. And I don't know what to make of the fact that there are no questions in the chat. Does that mean that everybody is going to support this? Because I really, really hope, as someone who's interested in healthcare, I will tell you, telemedicine depends on people having the both internet access and speed to do this. So are we yeses here? Do we have
Judy, since we don't have as many questions, maybe Kathy, if you're up to it, or I can, if you want help, maybe explain the non-recommended process so that everyone understands why there are 2 votes needed for the non-recommended item. Sure.
And by the way, I too think that this is a no-brainer, by the way, this digital equity thing. So if other people are feeling the same way, thank you. So the not recommended situation means that first we have to get a vote at the Friday afternoon plenary, hence all these caucuses being Friday morning. So the Friday afternoon plenary to get voted to be considered, to be sort of raised up to the level of the already recommended items. And that's a 2/3 vote that we would need on Friday afternoon. So we will move that to this effect on Friday afternoon. And then the Sunday plenary is where the final vote on position, both the recommended and any non-recommended items that are elevated to that point. And again, this is a 2/3 vote. So we will need your support twice. We hope to need your support the second time. We hope to get this through on Friday afternoon. And let me, since I have a little time, just say a little bit about where this came from. There's an informal group of league members with representatives from 30 states. We call ourselves the Rural Affairs Caucus. And when we formed, we did a survey that Judy designed to find out what the top concerns were of people from these rural areas around the country. And one of the top three, the healthcare, broadband access, and voting rights were the top three things. And we realized that broadband access was just intrinsic to the other concerns. So we decided to kind of work on this first. And when we discovered the really very good, the excellent Connecticut position, we said, hey, this would get this done fast. And also the two states had already concurred with it. And the thing about concurrence, and I know I'm speaking to the choir here, is that it happens. It could happen right now. And, next week, we could be using this position for our advocacy work, as opposed to doing, a whole new study. And of course, some of you will be speaking about studies that you have done. But for this issue of digital equity, this would be this would enable us to quickly get up to speed. And I can certainly stay in my rural county here in upstate New York on the Canadian border. The decisions are being made of what to do with that federal money. And of course, we're, communicating with our county legislators and whatnot, as individuals, but it would be so much better if we could be able to say that the League of Women Voters, supports this and bring all of our, our power here. Okay, here is,
Kathy,
yes.
we actually have a question on, can you speak very quickly on the community access and public affairs piece?
I will ask if Pua Ford is here. In fact, I know she is because I saw her put her name in. Pua is an expert.
I know. And when we did the study, they said Pua is the expert on PEG TV. And I said, then we're really in trouble. However, if you have such an organization in your area and your league has partnered with them on forums for issues, or especially for debates before elections, these are often nonprofit institutions that have stepped up during the pandemic to take care of information to the public on local government, to take care of information on where to get your vaccines and your tests and your masks. So together with broadband, that's important. Also together with broadband, they're riding on the same lines. They're riding on cables that go along the public rights of way. And traditionally, when it was just TV, when it was just cable TV, that's the principle on which funding was provided. Now, with the Internet Tax Freedom Act, the companies that sold you cable TV are selling you fast broadband as well, through which people are watching television. But there is no contribution for also providing the public access program, the community access program, because some of it is governmental or educational. So the nonprofits, yes,
we are running over slightly.
We need money, we need to help them. Yes, that's it.
I'm going to recommend, since I think we are posting the rehearsal for the caucus, which is only half an hour, that anybody who can go to the caucus on Friday morning. But if you can't, where might the rehearsal get posted, Akana? On the New Mexico website?
Yes, when I have the YouTube link, I will put it up at the top on the New Mexico page.
Okay, I will put that link I will put the New Mexico link in the website again, but I think we should move to Maud Nayrol. I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name right, who's going to talk about election security. Maud is from Colorado.
Thank you. And from Colorado, and for 8 years, high school and college in Western New York. So hello again, New Yorkers. And thank you very much for the chance to showcase Colorado's request for concurrence with our election security position. Gaithia Weiss and Neil McBurnett are going to also help as answer questions. I'm going to share my screen. So the first question is, why does League need positions? And we all of us who've done advocacy to take a stand on proposed legislation or ballot measures or regulations or any other advocacy, we need a principle or a position. No principle or position, no advocacy on that topic. Oregon, thank you, Becky, adopted a multi-part position that includes election security, and we gratefully stand on Oregon's shoulders. They're bringing two different parts of their position for national concurrence, and Colorado supports them both. What does national have?
Your screen isn't being shared.
Oh, shoot. Thank you. Yes, hit the little blue share button. I am so sorry. Okay, is that better? Yes. What does national have already? Our election security position will let League members coast to coast advocate for improving elections, which is a key part of the campaign for making democracy work. This is national's position on voting. It says nothing on security. This single sentence may have served well for the time 40 years ago, but times and technology have changed. Our position adds to the current position to make sure that those votes are counted accurately. Legislation has been introduced in state legislators across the country purporting to improve election security. More than 100 just in Arizona. We found our own election security position very helpful in deciding which to support or oppose among a raft of bills in our own state, some of which could seem okay at first glance, but really have problematic implications. The real and perceived threats to the integrity and faith in our elections may have serious long-term consequences. The country is torn between very important reforms, adopting paper ballots and audits, and others that might sound good but could disenfranchise voters. The move to paper ballots and more auditing in Colorado, Pennsylvania, Georgia, and elsewhere has been crucial to voter confidence. A large number of other proposed bills are impractical or could suppress voting. We all need a position to help us sift good from problematic. The country would benefit greatly from the carefully thought out approaches of Colorado's position. One important election reform, paper ballots, are so important, which is why they're included in our position. Currently, they're only in a resolution. Audits are another important election reform. Existing national position says we have to be able to vote, but nothing about whether votes are counted accurately. The principle says elections should be auditable, but doesn't say that audits need to be done. Our position on risk limiting audits is entirely consistent with the 2009 LWVUS election audit report. We introduced the term software independence because it's well defined as a flexible principle in the election integrity field. Note that doesn't mean we're not using software. It means making sure we don't have to rely on it, since software is pretty tough to secure. It helps future-proof our position, as new technology may open new ways for voters to ensure their votes are counted accurately. National's impact on issues does not address election software. We worked with leaders of the disability community and election officials on equitable voting access. This part of the Colorado position balances empowering voters whose disability prevents them from using paper ballots with defending democracy. It provides some important guardrails, but leaves the details up to best practices as they evolve. There's no guidance at all in the national principle, position, or resolution on how to securely empower these voters. Colorado's position will add to nationals guide members all over the country on what makes election systems secure, allow all of us to advocate for secure elections, and help rebuild everyone's confidence in our elections. Please vote on Friday and on Sunday for concurrence with our election position. Here and on the next slide are key points in our position. If you would like to support our position beyond voting for it, please put your name and contact info in the chat and something about election or election security. Here are the rest of the main points in our position, and almost all of these are missing from National's impact on issues. So thank you again, New York State, and everyone else who zoomed in. Thank you for this opportunity.
So you've got some questions.
Oh, good.
So we can start with risk limiting audits.
That would be Neil.
Hi, thanks. I put a brief definition in the chat, but a risk limiting audit is a very efficient and high quality way to basically compare the actual ballots with the interpretation of those ballots, and it's done by hand. In Colorado, we get data on all the contests in each election via some form of auditing, and many of those are risk limiting audits. And the phrase just means that it limits the risk that the actual result of the election was wrong. You can't always make it 100% in the real world, but it limits the risk.
So it uses statistics, is that it?
There is statistic involved, yeah.
Okay, so Gail says, in New York, we were not able to join advocacy for legislation that banned hybrid voting machines. Would this position, if adopted, allow us to oppose these next time?
That is a really great question and a really important issue. The particular issue in New York State is that the voting machines, some of the machines contemplated don't actually guarantee a voter verified ballot, because the machine can print on the ballot either without showing it to the voter or without after the voter has looked at it. And so both of those could have the machine incorporate a vote that the voter didn't see. So the fact that we are speaking very strongly in favor of voter verified paper ballots means that you could certainly advocate against those machines.
Let's see, what else do we have? If this concurrence passes, would it require ballots that are actually touched or handled by voters?
No, not at all. It requires that the ballots be verified by the voters, but there are voting systems out there that handle the entire path of the paper on behalf of the voter. Los Angeles has an exemplary system that doesn't require any handling by the voter.
And so when you're talking about integrity of voting machines, there's a couple of questions about that. What is that? What does that mean for this position?
The position supports testing of voting machines. It supports auditing of the results from them. I mean, I'll say at the highest level, we should assume, I'm a computer scientist, we should assume that there's a chance that any computer has been hacked. That's just the way that computer security works, unfortunately. So that's why actually part of the position is software independence, which is a term that basically means you have to be able to check any work being done by software. You have to have a voter verifiable paper ballot that software can't foul up. So I hope that answers the question.
Okay, so there has to be a way of involving humans in the software from the beginning. Okay, and then we have a question.
It has to be software independent, so that like with a paper ballot, you can go back and do a risk limiting audit, and if necessary, even a full recount, and you have the actual paper record, which and again, there's calling for proper chain of custody and protocols is securely transmitted from what the voter themselves had verified, then you have a way of checking that equipment.
So, thank you. How would this address an election official's efforts not to certify elections and oppose the will of the voters, or would it?
That's a very broad set of questions, but I think that in a state that had adopted the kinds of proposals we're talking about, there would be both less skepticism on the part of officials, but also more controls on requiring that those officials be trained and that they rely on multi-partisan teams to observe all the facets of the elections and allow for people to make commentary. I'm sure my colleagues have some other thoughts on that.
Also, we call for no history of fraud, election fraud on the part of election officials or workers or volunteers. And no relation, and no, oh, I'm sorry.
There's something about teams.
Teams of at least two with no two people from the same party, political party. Yes, thank you.
I have tried reading these. It does help to hear you talk about them. 100% mail-in ballots solve all these problems. Is that mentioned in your proposal?
We don't, we talk about expanding accessibility to voting, which certainly is helped by allowing mail-in ballots. We don't try to be over specific in telling states how to do things like that. I think the broad outlines of the existing national position already help support that kind of effort.
So we have another New York. I recognize this because of New York voting machines. Would this position allow the kinds of voting machines that print a ballot located behind a window and the voter looks at the words on the page? Although my understanding is that some of these behind the window have a barcode or something on the ballot and the machine doesn't read the words, it reads the barcode.
Yeah, there's a lot of pieces wrapped up in there. It would allow a machine that effectively allows the voter to verify their ballot. People are not moving to those machines much anymore, but there have definitely been problems with it being difficult to read and difficult to audit later on. It has to be auditable. So it would be very hard. I think a league could very easily advocate against something that was hard to either audit or verify. There was a second part of that I think they missed.
Well, it's the verification of the voter when they look to the screen. What they're seeing may be words rather than barcodes. So that
it's a barcode question. Yeah. So barcodes, I don't want to go into the details, but the defense against problems with barcodes are, first of all, to just ignore them. And that's a good approach, but also to do an audit that has humans interpret the ballot the same way the voter should have interpreted the ballot. And to ignore the barcode during the audit in terms of determining voter intent, and also to audit the barcodes against what the human interpretation is. So auditing is really the only way to feed machines that either print the barcode wrong or interpret the votes from the voter and print them out wrong.
Okay, thank you. So I think we have 1 minute. I don't know if you want to address the overseas ballots issue.
Well, one of the points that was made earlier was that mail-in voting kind of addresses all of the problems. There are absolutely disabled voters and overseas voters who face challenges that are hard for a lot of us to understand because, we're not in their shoes. And the proposal the position includes software independence as the basic requirement, which allows for some innovation while retaining the kind of security that we need. So again, we try not to be overly specific, but we try to really clearly state the important principles that will last for a long time and allow leagues to.
So including accessibility for disability, for those with disabilities and those overseas would include.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Very good. So now we're going to go to Oregon's 2 concurrences, and Rebecca Gladstone will take the floor. So I think, Neil, you should mute yourself, and Rebecca, we can't hear you.
Hi, can you see my slide? I tried to do screen share.
Yes.
And is it in presenter mode?
No,
No.
I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't think so.
You only, okay, let's try it again.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I appreciate the invitation. We appreciate the invitation. I will give a Denver Mile High review in under 10 minutes. Please support these concurrences at convention. If you're already supporting us, thank you. We have a full hour caucus on Friday at 10, and please join us. This is the crux of what I want you to hear. Our advocates need privacy and cybersecurity positions in the impact on issues to influence critical legislation. Our elections, our critical infrastructures and economies are threatened by systemic global changes to information security, e-business, and digital media. We must adapt and arm league advocates to protect our democracy. Use the QR code for concurrence documents. We urge you to support both of these titles. We aim for national concurrence since 2017. Last summer, Tony in Colorado, Grace in Texas, and Betsy on the national staff said our comprehensive cybersecurity and privacy position might be too much for delegates to read. And Maud and Karen in Colorado asked for some of our election security points. Yay. And in January, the National League recommended that we bring 2 sections. So look for 2 titles: information security and personal information protection, also electronic business and social media. These positions work. We use them in Oregon. We crafted them through a future-proofing lens to persist through high-speed digital technology transitions and planned obsolescence. I'll address 3 intertwining topics affecting American life with examples to show why we need cybersecurity and privacy positions. Election cybersecurity, personal privacy, and e-business influences both of these in many ways, including through social media. I'll wrap up with some examples of our extensive testimony using these positions and a look at the policy landscape. Critical infrastructure cybersecurity is in our positions as an election security cornerstone. Cyber attacks can hit the power grid, GIS, GPS, internet, and cell coverage. Remember, 9/11 and Hurricane Sandy both hit on election days. On C-SPAN, Mr. Hicks, who's on the right here, said he warned of foreign intervention. He said, including Russia, misleading voters in social media. If you don't vote, your vote certainly doesn't count. Okay, a real problem here is not only do we believe the fakes, but we're starting to doubt the truth. Our position supports free speech and pushes for responsibility for damaging media intrusions. The League must protect elections, the foundation of our democracy, against well-funded bad actors. Okay, I'd like to zip through some privacy issues. Privacy and transparency. Public record statutes and campaign finance reform battle between privacy and transparency. Free market competitors need proprietary business privacy. We need consumer protection and accountability for criminal actions, both of these. E-commerce. Popular phone apps track our shopping and offer us coupons in the mail as we go down the aisles. Healthcare depends on privacy. Telehealth emergency patient file access can save lives. Medical apps, like the retailers' apps, can track clinic visits and sell to drug companies to post ads to us. Tracking can reveal abortion clinic visits. Data mining could reveal mail abortifacient deliveries. We are watching SCOTUS daily now for Roe v. Wade repeal. This relevant privacy issue needs a League update, please. Okay, back to transparency versus privacy. I trade my privacy for Google Maps navigation help. Who can get this and sell my data? Data ecosystems harvest private information with market value estimated at $200 billion annually. US tech companies control what they collect, subject to their service terms. Artificial intelligence systems generate data concerning us for profit, entirely without our knowledge or permission, which is irrelevant if we don't know. Internet of Things, everything's connected. Cell phones are the single most powerful surveillance tool ever. We know our phones track us. There's a lot we don't know. We should be armed with positions to help craft legislation. My daughter comes home and says, "Hey, Google." The lights dim and her Internet of Things can tell anybody plenty. From Senator Merkley, we need to know about any data that, for example, car makers collect, where that data goes and who owns it. Surveillance is a privacy issue. Anybody heard of gait recognition? Google Pix facial recognition is smart, and it recognizes my dad, even as a little boy. But our local League members were profiled with facial recognition while legally supporting a position in a march. Facial recognition has racial bias and systemic discrimination. We raised this DEI cyber issue in police reform discussions. Should we see everything a cop sees? What about privacy for the little guy cowering in the corner of the police body cam image in the domestic disturbance call? We were happy to consult with the California Criminal Justice Group on surveillance and public records law work in Oregon. Vulnerabilities. This spring, data breaches, ransomware, and hacking compelled an Oregon legislative committee to declare cybersecurity will be on every committee agenda into the foreseeable future. We need these positions nationally. Remember, they affect elections, a League priority. Our position includes analysis of all of these for a global perspective. We were happy to share our digital equity broadband testimony, I put it in the chat, with New York Leagues. We know this is TLDR, too long, didn't read. The TLDR at the bottom of the last slide in the alphabet soup isn't just a media problem. Not reading can make us vulnerable. GDPR. It would be great to coordinate these big issues with international stakes affecting all of us. Oregon legislation, these positions are profoundly relevant. Our testimony helped most of these Oregon bills pass. Let's put these privacy and cybersecurity positions into our national advocacy tool chest. We need to vote now to pass these concurrences. Then get back to work because there's more to accomplish like these. A ton of this work is already done. Let's arm well-informed league advocates with language to protect our elections, our critical cyber structures, and our privacy. We recommend passage now. Please let me know if you're willing to speak to these issues. And as Maud said, I say the same thing. Put your name and your email into the contact information into the chat. And I'm happy to take questions. I want to remind you, we can't edit these proposals. We can be well-informed voters. So I welcome your questions.
Thank you very much. You've got a few questions. So the Oregon position will provide a platform to support the bipartisan American Data Privacy and Protection Act currently under discussion. So that would mean that if the US allows, we could lobby for it, or we could always lobby for it as citizens, but you're saying this would allow to lobby as a league?
Yes, that's right. Yes. I'll get back to you. I'm not sure how many here, I can only see one screen at a time. How many of you are actually advocates in your legislatures? I see one. I see 1, 2, 3, a few. I want to make sure that these scary issues don't make you feel like you personally have to pick up the banner. And there are people who are experienced with this.
So I'm going to ask people whose hands are raised to put their questions in the chat.
Okay.
Would this position still allow companies to require you to approve their privacy policies if you want to use their app?
This is a big issue. I felt so lucky when I got to the museum in Portland for an event. Oh, parking right in front, and I have 2 minutes to walk in, but there's no coin slot. You have to install the app. And the privacy statement, the user agreement is like this, and you have no choice because I didn't have time to go look for another parking spot. Click, I accepted it. We can use our judgment. Our advocates can go through and cherry pick and find the part they need to corroborate what they are working on today. I do want to add, in 1959, the National League was urged to take a position on segregation. It didn't pass. The National League mostly supported it, but they couldn't get an overwhelming concurrence, so they didn't adopt it. We need this position now.
Okay.
This is Sheila. Becky, I would add that our position does indeed say that it supports opting out, and it puts the responsibility for the statements, the privacy statement, on the company rather than the individual. It's very consistent. If you've been reading We the Users, it's very consistent with We the Users, and it does what I've seen of the law that was introduced in June, the bipartisan law. It's consistent with everything that we've put in it.
Thank you very much, Sheila. Let's see, who's next?
So companies naturally prefer legislation that be carried across borders, but can the privacy position work state by state? Do we have examples?
I don't think we have good examples. Sheila might be able to speak to this too. The whole point is that we've got weaselly characters who will, if they don't like it where it is, they'll take it somewhere else. And this goes globally. It's very hard to track. That's why we need a national position.
quote, compel private internet communication platforms, applications, social media, websites, etc., to be responsible for moderating content, end quote. Does that mean even a one-person website could be held legally liable if they didn't keep up with moderating user comments?
This is a
No, but-
really good question.
What
ahead,
we,
Sheila.
what we stated was that it should be, develop a series, stage it by tiers of corporate size. And so, and we aren't writing the law, so I wouldn't say what the cutoff is on sizes, but we said that it needs to be appropriate for the extent of the corporation.
I'd like to add that in my work with the Attorney General's Consumer Privacy Task Force in Oregon, we are struggling to craft legislation that is both protecting the consumers and sustaining business. We don't want to cripple business. If you say you have to opt in for everything, that means that Waze, my navigation thing, won't work, because that's how they track people. And I don't think any of the things that we say, thou shalt, because as Sheila said, mostly we're participating in crafting legislation. We are not usually writing it for adoption or proposal in legislatures. We're simply participating.
So I assume what that means is that you look at the proposed legislation, you figure out the things you like best and like least, and focus on those and talk to legislators about them.
We absolutely go to talk individually to try to influence things that look like they're amiss or could be improved. And sometimes we simply don't have a specific league position, so we don't address parts of some bills. I think really, if you find specific things you're concerned about, we trust the judgment of our advocates and we talk to them, and we want to take this for what it's worth instead of kicking the can down the road for another 6 years or something, however long it took us since 2017. This is really, really good positioning. It's really well crafted. We should adopt it. And the digital democracy study, let's get that underway too, because hello, we named our study Privacy and Cybersecurity Today back in September of, what was that, 2018? And it became ludicrous. It was already outdated as soon as we printed it. We need to keep moving on, but we should adopt this one now. Both of these concurrences.
So there's another question. Quote, harmonize laws and regulations across jurisdictions to protect individuals and assure trustworthy flow of information across all boundaries, government, organizations, industry sectors, states, and countries, unquote. For now, states like California lead the way in privacy legislation and the US follows. But that sounds like we'd be opposing a state having different laws than the rest of the country. Is
So
this
I would like to
stricter
say
law versus less strict?
we're trying to make aspirational coordination and cooperation. Keep in mind that California has, I understand, an economy larger than Russia. Of course, they have a big influence. We need to play nice, and we need to be able to count. And to do that, some of us who have real tiny economies need to get the National League to step up and speak with us.
So the answer to that question would be that where a state has stricter or more protective views, you'd be in favor of it, but where a state has nothing or lacks views, the aspiration would be that it would move to the national position.
That sounds good. Thanks.
I'm
Who asked
thinking
that
about
question?
healthcare. So New York has a healthcare bill which would cover all New Yorkers, and it would use general taxes and be comprehensive. I mean, and be a lot cheaper than what we're paying now, or at worst case, about the same. We don't want to be held back by states, and don't take this wrong, states that haven't adopted Medicaid. We believe states that haven't yet adopted Medicaid should work on the health reforms that they can get done and the National League should attempt to work on the big picture. Is that what you mean by this is a position and it's aspirational?
So I just saw what Akana wrote, and Akana, I like what you're saying. And I would urge, I don't see you. Maybe you can say hi and your picture will pop up.
Hi, I'm here.
Oh, there you are. There you are. Hi. So I would say my personal judgment on this would be to adopt these now, vote for the digital democracy study, get together with them and say, hey, you know what? Let's tweak this wordsmithing in these and go forward and move forward, because I might like something a little better at this point after several years, but I think we need this for right now. I don't think it's wrong. I just think it has room for improvement, but I don't think that's enough to dismiss it. Does that make sense?
Not really. I mean, if we have a position that says we would oppose a law where a state wants to have stricter rules about privacy.
Oh, I think you got it exactly backwards. I think if a government wants to be more protective, we're with you on that.
Yeah, but the position isn't,
That might be a scrivener.
because then it wouldn't be harmonizing across all levels.
So
Bill, you want to speak to that?
I'm going to defer to people
All of
who know
us
law.
that work on our legislative lobbying take the positions from our state league and the National League and apply them to the laws that come across. And for example, specific to our election security concurrence that we have at the state level and trying to get now to national, we had an internal election security legislation, which we at first talked to our legislators about what we felt were some serious needs for amendment. So much of that happened, and the law makes things much more improved. There are things about the law we don't think are perfect, but maybe next legislative session we'll work on that. So we can't expect perfection or think that we shouldn't have a position. That doesn't make any sense to me.
And this landscape changes really quickly. So it demands that kind of revision on a regular basis.
I'd also like to add to that, and that has to do with the language. The language has to be accepted because of regulations, and we cannot tweak language. It's not a time to throw the baby out with the bathwater. It's time to work and get these perfected down the line as we are using them. And we encourage states to use this and come, because we know nationally it's going to take a whole lot longer for any of this to happen. So it is incremental, but I hope you don't disregard it, because the wording doesn't seem absolutely perfect.
Thank you. So we are now, you guys have used your 20 minutes very well. And we now have until 6:30 for those of you who want to stay to either discuss or answer other questions. The chat seems to have slowed down. So anybody who wants, I would suggest we open the floor to those people who want to either endorse things or ask questions or make other comments. Don't everybody rush in at once.
I just want to thank everybody who participated and who presented. I learned a bunch today, so thank you, and thank you, Judy and Laura, for getting this organized.
Yeah, I think this is a wonderful venue, and we need to push at the national level to make sure that this kind of communication keeps happening and expands. We can do in-person things again now too, but I think we should learn from what we've been able to do online to keep these kind of conversations going. And I think it's just absolutely essential that we have all of this material that was presented today, because the league has to be able to function in the modern world. And in a sense, it's falling seriously behind in the way it's doing things.
Thank you. So Barb Thomas, my counterpart in healthcare, has raised her hand.
Yeah, and I wanted to say that I was really impressed with these, all the presentations. And there is really no reason why we cannot adopt every single concurrence. It's not like it's going to cause us any more trouble to have these positions, as long as they're not positions we object to. That it really, it's not like adopting a study where you really have to put in a lot of work and a lot of resources. Adopting a concurrence that somebody else has worked darn hard on to come up with wording that, I mean, I know there's like one thing in our healthcare thing, we really wish we had changed a word. But we can't change it now, and it'll work with that word. And maybe we'll get it as an editorial change. So I just think that it's really important that we not say, oh, we can't adopt them all.
I would agree with that. I started off with real questions about some of these, and I will just state my view that I'm really favorably impressed with them. Unless somebody can give me objections, I mean, I'd kind of like to say, who has objections to any of these, including healthcare or criminal justice? Because I'd like to hear those objections overturned while we've got people here.
Judy, this is Deborah. I'll just let you know that the national office in making their non-recommended positions have cited, I assume for all of us, that they only have so many resources, financial and human, and that doing more than what they're prioritizing will be, a strain on the organization. And so that's probably something to be thinking about. The age amendment bias is pretty low lift. But for some of these others that might be on the floor kind of discussion.
So what, as a healthcare person who has noticed that intermittently the US League supports Medicare for all, but most of the time it is a watchdog issue, which means they do or don't watch it, but they don't act. And while it is a priority and part of the program, it's a watchdog issue. I understand that they don't want to do things because they don't have enough staff time. Simultaneously, adopting a concurrence at the national level allows local and state leagues to advocate. And much of what happens in this country, I would say as a healthcare advocate, not as an MC here, a lot of what happens is at the state and local level. And then when it works, you can move it up. Neil, Kathy, and then Neil.
Actually, Neil was first.
Okay, fine. Go for it, Neil.
Whatever you like. Thank you. I'm really glad to be sensitized to how national is perceiving things. And I think it's very helpful for us to really try to get in their shoes, but also particularly for that one to push back. I mean, for a study, there's a little bit of time involved, but I think it's well worth it. For a concurrence, what I see it doing is drawing in new people, volunteers, members around the country that are now empowered to actually, work with legislatures and grow the movement and bring more dollars into national to support more staffing and so on. I don't understand it. So, but I know I might not be quite getting what they think would be burdensome about, expanding the issues that we support a little bit.
Kathy?
Yeah, well, and that's, the not recommended concurrences, we all got the same sort of generic explanation, because of course we all said, well, why not? And the generic, response was, well, we only have so many resources and we just, can't take on, don't want to take on more things and whatnot. And yeah, exactly. I mean, our whole point with the digital equity concurrence is that we're trying to empower individual members, local leagues, state leagues. You don't have to do a thing at the national level here because, and really with the digital equity issues, look, the national, it's deadlocked, the Build Back Better, this is just all deadlocked there. But stuff is happening at the local and the state level. And we need to be able to have the stronger voice that the league gives us. So yeah, we do. I mean, I understand their priorities and their limited resources, but we do need to push back on this.
Thank
By
you.
voting yes for these concurrence.
Mary,
And as a 50-year league member, I have never felt so close to leaving the league when they say no to these absolutely essential tools that we need in the toolbox to take action at all levels. And so it's a deal breaker for me in the league and the National League. So if you are opposed to these positions in any way, please write to us and tell us why, so we can answer you.
thank you. Agree. By the way, it's not totally opposed. We can overcome it by voting on Friday and Sunday for these non-recommended ones, and for the recommended ones on Sunday, please. Sheila.
I would add that one of my concerns has been that when we see all the federal gridlock, what is really happening is a lot of the issues that we're looking at, whether it's voting rights, reproductive rights, environmental issues, cybersecurity, you name it, you can list 12 topics or more, where the states are going to have to step in and do something because the feds are doing nothing, though they are currently looking at a cybersecurity privacy law. And simply by virtue of the fact that we, the states, are going to have to take on a lot of these battles ourselves, we need to be able to have positions, and we can't wait for national to define, you can talk about this, but not about that. And so that's, I think that's really important.
Thank you. Maude.
Thank you. I think I would say for all of us, if there's anyone, I hope everyone here is going to vote for all 4 of these measures, both on Friday and on Sunday. But if anyone would like to speak on Sunday in favor of them, any of them, I think if you could put the topic and contact info in the chat, that would be fabulous.
Actually, I think that would be very useful for anybody who would be willing to do. So the only thing I would say about speaking pro and con is that my memory of 2020 was that if there was only one pro and no cons, they cut off debate. So those of you who think that there ought to be a few pros may have to figure out how to keep debate moving. I don't know how, I'm not saying a thing here, but if somebody wants to speak, you probably ought to put it into the chat so that your concurrence folks can figure out how to use you in the best possible way.
So I can speak to that if that's okay. I have a list of a baker's dozen talking points because we did hear in training, keep it to a minute or less. If we don't see anybody and we don't know who's virtual, maybe we just cross our fingers and trust. We're going to have to really do some fast strategizing and cram some of those little individual points together and try to prioritize the most important ones.
So Barb says, speaking of digital equity, she's from Saratoga, which is actually a place with human beings and broadband. My screen has frozen 9 times during this Zoom and kicked me off 3 times. So vote yes on digital equity. And that probably has something to do with cybersecurity too. Anyone can call the question to end debate, then the delegates vote if they agree or not with ending the debate. So that's from Laura. My question sometimes is, however, if it's not something that people have heard about, I'm not sure that ending debate is the first choice. Sometimes sometimes it's good to have at least 2 or 3 or 4 interchanges so that the floor that has not been paying attention hears what's at stake. So thank you, everyone. I appreciate it. We have 8 more minutes if anybody wants to say anything. Otherwise, I'm going to say, I think, Laura, that we have everybody's email. Should we send people either links to or these materials? I gather people would like the PowerPoint.
I would suggest, my email's real easy. It's Laura, first name, Laura, at lwvny.org. And if you want to send me the presentations, if you want to send me additional materials, I know some of it is up on the US website and in the app, but I'm finding a lot of members or a lot of delegates are struggling to find information. So if you want to send it to me, I can send it out to everybody who is on this Zoom, and at least then you'll get most of the New York State delegates. And then there's quite a few other people that have joined us tonight. So I really appreciate that.
Can I, so are we going to be able to put this Zoom on the New York State YouTube?
Yes, I will do that as soon as it's finished. And by tomorrow morning, I can share it with all the speakers and they can, decide how they want to use it and put it on their websites or send it out, whatever they want to do. But we will have it. Yes, I will have it by tomorrow morning or later tonight. And we'll share with all the speakers and we'll share with all the delegates and observers from New York State.
That's fabulous. Thank you.
I'm going to type it in my email just in case you didn't quite catch it, but it's very easy. We keep our first names. It makes it easy.
So thank you. I'm going to leave. I'm going to say that anybody who would like to leave may leave. We will leave the meeting open for a little bit so you can save the chat if you want to save the chat, which you can do by just clicking on the 3 little dots that are in your chat box, or so you can put your emails in or any requests or anything else. But thank you, everybody, for showing up and spending so much time with us.
Yes,
Neil,
thank you all.
Neil, you want to speak?
Yeah, you people here have done a great job with 4 of the questions. Do we know how many concurrence proposals there will actually be? I know there are others that that were listed as not being on the agenda, but a lot of them didn't even seem like they were worked out as concurrences. What others should we consider? Or have you already decided to oppose or whatever?
So I did not put on the list the 2 studies.
Yeah.
And I think one is the
Maine.
One is the main one and one is the monetary policy. And then there is a series of resolutions. The resolutions all get voted on, I think, on Sunday after everything. I think they're the last thing that gets voted on, right? And so the resolutions basically just charge the US, I don't mean to trivialize them, but I think they charge the US League with doing something in the next biennial. And my understanding, having been on the winning side of a couple of resolutions in 2018 and 2020, is that even if you get the resolution passed, you don't necessarily see much action because the National League does not have a lot of resources, although it has more resources now than it did 2 or 4 years ago. So as far as I know, there's only these 5 concurrences, because Oregon is 2, plus the 2 recommended concurrences. I think that's it on kind of where it is, and the rest may well be resolutions or studies.
Very helpful.
Laura wants to know if there's possible to vote either in advance or by proxy.
I don't think so. No. Nope. You have to vote, even if you're in Denver, you're going to have to vote on a phone or a laptop or a tablet or something. So all voting will be taking place, electronically, I guess, phone, laptop, tablet or something. So, but that's the only way to vote, right?
So Jory wants a call out to the news access and literacy resolution. So Jory, there it is for you. The other thing I'm concerned about is I don't know if there's 300 or 400 people voting in the same 2-minute period, whether the hotel's broadband is going to be enough, because I'm sorry, the digital equity people have caused me to be worried about things like broadband and the hotel getting 400 people voting at once. So don't know how that's going to happen.
We'll find out quickly.
Yes. So thank you, everyone. and
Thank
we're
you.
gonna say
Yes.
goodbye.
Okay, have a good evening.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. It was really terrific, all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.